Just before calling Jim Davison, I should have also said that we are continuing to make evacuations across the Lockyer Valley area. We have people being evacuated from Toogoolawah and Esk, 200 evacuations likely to occur this morning at Forest Hill, although we expect they'll be evacuated into an evacuation centre in higher ground at Forest Hill. We have also seen overnight evacuations in Nananga. We also have the community of Cherbourg now completely cut off and food supplies being taken in. There are multiple breaks in the road between Ipswich and Toowoomba. People should not be driving on those roads, and we continue to need those roads to be free from other vehicles than emergency vehicles. I'll ask Jim Davison to give us a bit of an update on what the weather is doing and some background to the event that has led to this terrible tragedy.
Thank you, Premier. Good morning, everyone. The super rainstorm we saw yesterday over Toowoomba in the Lockyer Valley was an extreme event, and you'd say it was towards the top of the severe weather and flash flooding scale. It was very unique. What were the circumstances that set up this particular event? It all started, I guess, a few days ago with that upper low, which we were all tracking, the one that moved out to sea off Capricornia, then moved back onshore again. So that was the synoptic, the larger scale feature, which produced this exceptional storm. But there were considerations, all on the local scale. The saturated catchments, of course, we've had flooding now for many weeks, many months, and Toowoomba itself actually had upwards, I think, of 100 millimetres on the previous day, so the ground was very wet. The escarpment, the range just on the doorstep of Toowoomba, that would have served to produce uplift for the rain and precipitation, so once again it was a local factor which contributed. The relatively large area of this rainstorm, the rainstorm itself wasn't that exceptional in terms of appearance on radar and satellite, but it did cover a fairly large area. The rainfall reports we did get from Toowoomba said they received about 80 millimetres in half an hour, or a little bit more than half an hour. We're fairly confident that if we had rainfall reports on a much tighter scale, smaller scale, we would have seen 100 to 150 millimetres easy in that general area. And of course the other consideration was the funnelling into Lockyer Creek. Having Toowoomba situated where it is, Lockyer Creek immediately underneath the range, it all came together, as I said, on a very local scale. Now when it comes to forecasting, the computer models that we use aren't run at a high enough resolution to pick up these sort of very small scale weather features. Every now and again, I hope it doesn't happen very often, it won't happen very often, I can reassure people that we will get one of these very extreme events which fall within our resolution of our computer models. But our forecasters are on the alert, monitoring the weather as it happens, and yesterday we were monitoring that particular rainstorm as it moved across southeast Queensland, but as I said, for all intents and purposes, we were satisfied at the time that the severe weather warning, which spoke about potential flash flooding in the Toowoomba region, would cover that circumstance. As we know now, it didn't. When we did become aware that the rainfall was extreme in the Toowoomba area and that flooding was starting to occur, we immediately jumped into flash flood warnings and we turned on the standard emergency warning signal. And we made calls to numerous agencies, relevant agencies, authorities responsible for policing the Lockyer Valley and surrounds, the police, for example, and Emergency Management Queensland, and alerted them to the fact that we did have a serious situation on our hands. I might stop there, but I'm happy for any questions. Thank you.
Jim, can I just check, you say that this could not be forecast?
Perhaps I shouldn't say it could not be forecast, but I think it's important to say that it's very difficult to forecast. I'm not saying we miss all events of this nature, but every now and again one will be the combination of factors on the local scale will produce an extreme event of this nature. And it's not always we have the the science and the capacity to see this before it happens.
But what were the exceptional circumstances here? You're saying that, it was heavy rain, but you see heavy rain before. It was a bit larger than normal, but that's about all, really.
Well, not really, because I said before there were those other factors operating. The saturation, everything was saturated. So this rain, when it fell, it wasn't absorbed into the ground. It stayed on top of the ground and eventually moved into Lockyer Creek. The escarpment. Having storm approach the escarpment, I guess even on that particular angle, meant the uplift was very strong. So the cloud and precipitation uplifted, and when cloud and precipitation lift like that, it drops huge amounts of rain. So it all came together in a very local area within a short period of time. It could well be that the entire storm didn't really impact on the Toowoomba area, but just for half an hour or so. The actual rainstorm took much longer than half an hour to actually pass over Toowoomba, whereas the rain event was more like 30 minutes or so.
And you were saying, so I didn't quite follow, you said it measured 80 millimetres in 30 minutes, but it was more likely to be 100 to 150.
Yeah, because of the very small scale of what occurred, we do have a fairly good network of rainfall reporting in that area, but not dense enough to pick up everything that fell on the ground. So we suspect, with what we saw, the 8-metre wall of water going down the Lockyer Creek, there must have been falls maybe even of 200 millimetres in places, perhaps on top of the range or just down from the range at Toowoomba. Now, that, if I could just say, a fall of 80 millimetres in half an hour or so, we're looking at about a 1 in 100 year event for that area. Now, we get 1 in 100 year events fairly frequently across Queensland for a particular town or city. So, not great, but as I said, we're almost certain there were much higher falls close by.
You said last night that you were fearful there could still be people spending the night on rooftops. You said that for the greater residential areas, it's not the York area. Are we sure that those people are safe in the residential areas?
We can say that we don't have any visual sightings from helicopter of people on rooftops in Helidon or Grantham. We are unable to say that there may not be some people on rooftops in more isolated rural properties. Remember that this is a rural part of Queensland. There are many people who do not live in town. Similarly, we don't know necessarily where those people, if there were any people who have subsequently got back into the buildings they were sitting on top of as some of the water's gone down, and we won't know that until we can get either water boats or a helicopter in there.
And some of those pictures that we've seen have just been so heartbreaking. You said earlier that a lot of those missing are young families.
We have some 72 people unaccounted for, and obviously they span from the very young right through to the very old, but we do have some whole families who at this stage are unaccounted for. We, I think, have already seen absolute tragedy with the 8 deaths that are known. It does include 2 children who are quite young, but we all know that at least the first 4 were 2 children quite young, and the second 4, a mother and 2 children, so half of the 8 so far are children. This took everybody so unawares that there was no opportunity in most cases for people to get to safety. So we do anticipate that these numbers are very preliminary. Until we get our emergency people into those areas, we really can't give you anything more certain other than to say, in all honesty, we hold very grave concerns for a number of these people who are not accounted for, and we are anxiously worrying that we will see this toll rise.
At what point did the message go out to evacuate those residents, and why did it take so long?
Are you talking in terms of the emergency evacuation signal? That was enacted as soon as we could, but there is a time lag from when that goes, when the process starts to when it actually physically goes out. Certainly, there was no evacuation in Toowoomba. There was no warning in Toowoomba because of the nature of the event. And as I've explained previously, when we're dealing with floods like we've seen throughout the state over the last couple of weeks, most of that we can predict. We have time to get in to deal with it. This was purely an emergency response situation with no warning at all, basically, to emergency services. We simply had to react the best way we could, and all emergency services swung into action as they would normally do in any such event.
Is there more warning though for Grantham and further down after Toowoomba?
Certainly, the volume of water caught, I think, most people by surprise, and I am not yet sure, because we haven't been able to go back and tally this up, what emergency warnings went out to the lower Lockyer area.
I just describe the situation in Grantham at the moment. I know last night you were saying there was 30 or so people in the school hall. There's a lot of the news about missing people coming out of that area.
No, certainly Grantham is one of the focus, but the other one is that Murphy's Creek and Withcott area. That's the other area we're having difficulty getting into, and as most of that area is not isolated, but rural property on acreages, that sort of thing. And it's going to take us a long time today to get to every one of those areas. I mean, the sheer scale of this operation is quite daunting when you look at the number of places, areas and creeks that have been affected.
Can you give us any more information on the victims? We know that there were 4 children and 2 mothers. Can you tell us about the other people and where these people are?
Certainly there was an elderly lady in a house at Helidon who was found deceased as a result of the flood. A gentleman and a middle-aged man and a younger male in the Murphy's Creek area have been confirmed deceased. And as you said, then there were the others and their children. They were both in vehicles. One was in Toowoomba in the initial phase, and the second vehicle was down at Grantham.
Can I say these tragic deaths overnight are a very timely reminder to everybody that this fast-moving water kills. I saw images on every news station last night in other parts of Queensland of people jumping off bridges into this sort of water and people attempting to drive through quite heavy water over bridges and over roads. Our emergency services are up to this task, but we do not need to challenge them further with people doing stupid things.